Hello, and welcome to episode 194, all about the LEGO Lord of the Rings video game, being the 194th part of That's What I'm Tolkien About. Hello, my name is Mary Clay. If that's too complicated for you, just call me MC. I've been experiencing the world of Tolkien for the first time, and right now I'm doing anything that I want to, including playing the LEGO Lord of the Rings video game. Today I'm joined by Nick of the Tolkien Heads. Welcome, Nick.
Hey, thanks for having me, Mary Clay, and I'm excited to talk about Lord of the Rings Legos.
Yes, it's such a wonderfully surprising, fun part that I get to do. Especially after finishing reading the Silmarillion and other stuff. It's like, yay, now I just get to have fun and play a video game, and it's silly, and I don't have to worry about consequences.
It's so true. It's like getting super nerdy on your favorite TV series, and then you finish the season and you're like, I'm just going to put Friends on in the background now. Just something mindless to take a break.
Yes, it's great. Why don't you tell me and the listeners a bit about your background and history with Tolkien and Lord of the Rings and whatnot? How did you get introduced to it? And what is it that who are the Tolkien Heads? Tell us a bit about that as well.
Okay, so I'll talk about the Tolkien Heads and then go to my own little biography. So Tolkien Heads is a podcast I put on with Trip Fuller, who is the host of the Homebrewed Christianity podcast. And right before the Rings of Power came out, he just kind of, on Twitter, I didn't really know him that well at that point. He was like, if anybody wants to put on a Tolkien class before the show comes out, I'm down. And I DM'd him and I was like, I hang out with Tolkien scholars. Are you serious? So we put together an intro to Tolkien class. It's also, we kind of did interviews and just nerded out about Tolkien. So that's what it is. We're just an intro to Tolkien class based on his religious upbringing, his interaction with Beowulf, things of that nature.
Yeah, I've had some people suggest, I've been asking what people want to hear now that I've covered kind of the basics of Tolkien now. And so I'm like, what do you guys want me to do? And some people have suggested Beowulf. And I'm like, no. I did that in AP English in high school. And that was about as much as I want to dip my toes into the Beowulf waters.
Oh, it's a deep well. When you talk to Tolkien scholars, you're like, the scholarship that's been around for, 50 years and they're 70 years because Tolkien wrote about Beowulf. And I'm like, take it easy. Okay. Calm down. All right.
And then what is it that got you into Lord of the Rings?
Yeah. So this goes back early before I was conscious about Tolkien and the whole legendarium. My Nana owned a video rental store back in the late 80s, early 90s and sold her business and had all her VHS tapes. And so I ended up watching the animated Hobbit films when I was a kid just because I enjoyed them and had no context for it was connected to Lord of the Rings or anything. So that was my first exposure. And then when I was in 5th grade, the Return of the King was coming out in theaters. And so my family ended up renting The Fellowship and the Two Towers at Blockbuster. We watched them on repeat. And then we saw The Return of the King in theaters and became movie fans of Tolkien. And then it wasn't until college that I actually read The Hobbit through The Lord of the Rings and then to the Silmarillion, and then became a super Tolkien nerd at that point, where I've read the history of Middle-earth and found out there was a Tolkien society. And so been a Tolkien nerd probably my whole life. And then I would say kind of jumped the level to super nerd in 2015.
Love it. Yeah. What a pleasant surprise that must be to watch the animated Hobbit movie and then, later learn that this is connected to one of the most expansive fantasy universes ever created.
Oh yeah. My mom actually found a 2nd grade coloring thing that I did during St. Patrick's Day. And I colored a leprechaun and made his beard blue and named him Dwalin. And
oh my God.
And had no I named it from the movie, have no memory of it, and had no idea it would be such a big part of my life.
That's really fantastic. I love it. I have a special, place in my heart for the anime, mainly the Rankin and Bass animated films. Those are the more like wholesome ones. And then the Lord of the Rings Ralph Bakshi animated one is a totally other thing in and of itself. But I think the animated Hobbit in particular is like a really wonderful, underrated adaptation of Tolkien's that a lot of people don't know about. So what a great thing that you came to it by a VHS tape from a video store, like things that just do not happen anymore these days.
Right.
So let's jump into this week's levels, I guess, of Lego Lord of the Rings, as opposed to normally I'm doing like chapter reads. This week we're playing some levels. So first I have to start off by saying that I think I've gotten so much of this mixed up about like when certain cutscene scenes happen and like, is it with this level or this level? So the way that I was going to open this part in the game actually happened like in a previous level. So I'm already mixing things up. It's fine. We're going to pretend this is how it happened. But we see Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas in Fangorn Forest, and they believe Saruman is coming for them, and they get, prepared to fight, and then out comes the White Wizard. Ooh, who could it be? And instead of, in the movie, I think he just does something with his staff and it just like knocks back all of their weapons and stuff. But he turns Aragorn's sword into a bunch of bananas, which is really great. Especially given that previously a banana is what killed our dear friend Boromir. And then it's revealed that it is Gandalf, obviously. We know this. And so the way that level actually begins now is they are heading off to Edoras. In Edoras, I wish they had gone for the This is all happening in cutscenes, by the way. You're not really playing yet. There is like a few elements where like you're riding a horse for 10 seconds and then you go into the next level. Before they enter I forget what it's called, whatever, the throne room, they hand over all your weapons. And I wish they had gone for the gag where one character just like keeps pulling out weapons, and I think it would have fit really well for Gimli if like, Gimli is just it's like all your weapons, and then like he pulls out a knife and like at some point a banana and like other ridiculous things. I think that would have fit really well here, considering it's a Lego game.
I agree. They miss an opportunity, especially because like when you're in there and you can like grab drumsticks and fight Rohirrim with drumsticks. So like you said, could have been pulling out all the weapons, bananas, drumsticks, and they missed it.
Yeah. And it would have been even funnier because, he's the dwarf and it's like he's the smaller of the characters. Where is he storing all of that stuff?
Totally.
Like would have been really great, but that's okay. So then in Theoden's Hall, you go into a fight sequence where at first I was kind of confused because you have to fight off all the Rohirrim soldiers, but it's kind of like, wait, these are also supposed to be our allies, so I don't want to kill them. So I was trying not to like fight them and just trying to go up to the front where Theoden is and use Gandalf's staff on him. But you have to like fight off all these guys and like kill them. And I'm like, sorry, we just... later on, in Helm's Deep, when they're like desperate for soldiers, like would have really come in handy if I hadn't killed a bunch of them just now.
And you have to use their block bodies to make cages, don't you? Like after you like turn them into block pieces, you use their remains to create a cage.
Yeah. And then there's also all these items that you can pick up around the room. I didn't realize that you could use them to fight I guess, see, now I'm connecting all the dots. What you said about like, you can use a drumstick to fight them. That makes sense because they just had their weapons taken at the door, so they wouldn't have any weapons.
Right.
But as I was playing it, I was just going around and picking up all of these like glowing pieces. And I was like, am I supposed to like be putting something? I was so confused. And then like soldiers are coming at me. So it was just a classic situation of like, I didn't truly understand what the goal was of this. I didn't understand like the mechanics of what was happening. I was like, why am I building a cage? I don't know, but I just built it, just hitting a bunch of buttons and seeing what's happening. What I thought was fun and kind of a reverse of a video game trope is that usually in a level, a fight, you have a villain and they have 3 hearts and you're trying to knock a heart off.
Right.
But with this one, Theoden has 3 empty heart slots. And every time you like use magic on him or whatever, it revives one of the hearts. So I thought that was a fun kind of like reversal of a video game trope.
I thought it's a cool interpretation too of like the text, because even in the movies, I guess in the books too, there's almost like this exorcism happening where it's drawing out, Saruman. And then the hearts, like you said, it's almost like it happens this way, but it's cool that it focuses on like the restoration of Theoden rather than like the removal of Saruman. That's pretty cool. I didn't even think about it that way.
Yeah. And you just hear every now and then you'll hear, cause this is one of, I still didn't look it up before, but for a while, a lot of the Lego games didn't use dialogue from the movies. They would just use like Lego speak.
Right.
But we have the pleasure of playing these levels, and then you hear, Sir Christopher Lee being like, "Theoden is mine," and you're like, "Whoa, where did that come from?"
That was one of the coolest things when I was watching the cutscenes and then watching some of the playthroughs, because I didn't end up playing it, but I watched a bunch of a YouTuber do it. Is I was so surprised that it was like audio from the horn of Helm's Deep, of Helm Hammerhand, like you said in the dialogue. It was really cool. I think I'm actually going to buy the game and like play it through.
Yeah, I wish I could tell you where to go to buy this game, because it's only available on like much older systems now, and they haven't I think we've talked about this now in every episode about how we just want them to do like a re-release for like the Nintendo Switch or something. Like that would be really awesome, but I don't think that will happen, but I don't know, it could, because Lego's been releasing more Lord of the Rings, like actual Lego sets and stuff recently. So it could be in the future. Everyone tweet at Lego right now, wherever you are. Stop what you're doing and go tweet at Lego and say, re-release the Lego game for Switch. Because how many people honestly still have their Wii? I do, only because I dug it up from my parents' basement. So
mine's still in the closet, so maybe I need to break it out.
Yeah, Theoden has been exactly exorcised of the demon Saruman. Éowyn runs over and she like pulls the beard, like it's a beard Lego piece off
my
of
favorite
him.
Gag out of everything. That was my
It's
favorite.
really fun, yeah. Also worth noting, however, that Éowyn does not say any lines at this point. She's doing what I would call the Lego mumbling, where she's like, "Aww." Like not actually saying words yet. And I'm like, what a weird choice for them to not just like insert one of Miranda Otto's lines from the movies, but okay.
It was weird because she really, the Lego Éowyn, she doesn't speak until Helm's Deep.
Yeah, it's a while, yeah. Then cutscenes of Theoden and Gandalf, they're talking about war is coming for them, and because this is a Lego game and it's putting all 3 of the books/movies into one video game, things are going to be very sped up in terms of like what happens with the plot and everything. So immediately they're like, let's go to Helm's Deep. So on the way to Helm's Deep, Gandalf and Aragorn are talking, and Gandalf decides that he's going to go off and find Éomer and bring them and the rest of the Rohirrim to Helm's Deep. So bye, Gandalf. And then we immediately go into the battle with the wargs. And I was kind of surprised because this is a part in the movie where we have some comedic relief moments with Gimli, and he's talking about the dwarves and dwarven women, and like Éowyn is laughing a bunch at his jokes and stuff. And so this being a Lego game, I was like, oh, they really like cut out a lot of the, what could be like a fun comedic moment. Considering that like what I would argue the whole purpose of the Lego video games is to make these like epic stories and movies more suitable for children to enjoy,
100%, yeah.
So then you run around as Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli. I would say most of the time I just end up playing as Aragorn until there's like something that I have to do as Legolas where like you have to switch over to him to like shoot the target down or something. But most of the time I'm playing as Aragorn. And you're riding around on wargs, and then it's like you defeat 3 and then like 5 more jump down and, so on. And then finally there's a cutscene kind of showing the end of the battle. Aragorn gets like cornered on a cliff by an orc and he like chops him in half. And the top half of the Lego piece like falls off, but then the legs like continue chasing him. And then they kick Aragorn in the crotch and he falls backward off the cliff.
That was also just so great. And I feel like that's probably part of why they removed like the Gimli jokes about women dwarves so they could add like their own gags like that. Mm-hmm. And then of course later when they find out that Aragorn is gone and they find out he tumbles off the cliff, like the bottom half of that orc is still by the cliff and Theoden kicks it off into the water. Hilarious.
Yeah. I like how they take the real life mechanics of Legos and put it into the games where totally. Like this is how a Lego person actually works, if you were holding one in your hand that like you can separate like the body off of the legs.
Yeah, it's interesting how they handle violence too, because they took out a lot of the stuff, like when at the beginning of the game when Isildur gets shot with arrows, they make him turn invisible and they just show the arrows and the invisible ball of arrows falls into the water. But then Gimli, when he goes up to that orc, the top half of the Lego guy crushes him.
Right. Yeah. He goes up like to interrogate him and is like, what did you do with him? And then he jumps on him and then eventually you hear the Lego breaking sound effect, which is just, it's such a funny thing to signal death.
Breaking Legos. Yeah, 100%.
Because it's what happens, when you die in a level. Like, you hear that sound effect. Then we go into Helm's Deep. Éowyn is waiting for them there, and she's like, this is the first time we do actually hear her speak. So right. At least there's that. I was like, oh no, are we going to go the whole game and she's just going to be making, like, vague mumbling sounds? Like, what's happened?
It was like Tolkien, women get a little spotlight. Peter Jackson's like, even less. Legos.
Lego.
Even less. Come on.
I should mention Arwen at this point, non-existent.
Does she eventually show up in the game?
I honestly can't even remember. So you do see her in Fellowship when she rescues Frodo and them after he's been stabbed. And so you do have that. And then I think like maybe you see her briefly again in Rivendell, but we have not seen her since then. And like technically, to be fair, the Lego games are really trying to progress the plot along. And so they have to butcher it down to like the bare essentials. And, unfortunately, Arwen is not an essential part of this story.
So sad.
So yeah, Éowyn's like, what's happened? And Gimli says, he fell. And then kind of like comedic timing too. But also absolutely epic. They did the doors scene, which is one of the best moments in cinematic history. Aragorn pushing the doors open at Helm's Deep, revealing he's survived. No.
All eyes and guys.
Wait. They did the doors. Such a classic moment, and they put it into the movie, and I was so pleasantly surprised because there have been a lot of moments that have not made the Lego game cut. So
right.
I'm glad to see that this got adapted.
I feel like that is like become a meme too, that moment where he pushes through, where it's like simultaneously everyone loves Aragorn, he's back, Éowyn's happy, and then of course Viggo Mortensen is just channeling the hot warrior energy. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like absolute crush. If I could have that poster like on my ceiling without my wife getting jealous, like it would be there.
Well, you should ask your wife because she also might want that poster.
Very
up there.
true.
So,
Very true.
you know,
I need to take that angle. Yeah.
yeah. Being like, this is a win for everyone.
Yeah, this is for both of us. Okay. I'm thinking
Yes.
about us.
Theoden is like, all right, we got to get ready for battle. We need every soldier. And then Eowyn pulls out her sword and is like, ah! And then Theoden walks past her and goes like, get the women and children into the caves. And then she goes like, oh, and is like really disappointed. I think she might have done that like similarly in the warg attack level. I can't remember.
Yeah, she does.
But I like that they're kind of like foreshadowing that like she's going to have this huge moment in battle, you know, in Return of the King. Immediate like cut to night, you know, it's raining, the orcs are coming. Theoden is saying, you know, Gimli is trying to explain like the Uruk-hai are nothing you've seen before, and Theoden goes, I know how to defend my own keep. And next to him Aragorn does a face palm, which is just so just like really conveying like a lot of the feelings that I think you have when you're watching this and you're like, no, Theoden, you don't know.
Well, and I think it's funny too, because Lego, like you said, with this one, they actually get the dialogue from the movies, but I feel like Lego, because I played the Star Wars games back in the day, and they had to do like a lot of physical humor. And so I think even in when they go in to the keep with Grima and Theoden, like when Gandalf keeps his walking stick, he like winks at Aragorn, and then of course Aragorn kind of like shakes his head, you know, with a smile.
Yeah, lots of like physical comedy. Yeah. Aragorn's like, we need to, you know, send for aid, and Theoden says, but who would come? And then immediately the elves are there. There's also very little context for this because there's very little context if you are playing the Lego game and you have no other idea of Lord of the Rings, because in the Lego game, they like gloss over Rivendell entirely. Like,
really?
You have a very brief scene where they meet Galadriel, and she's like side-eyeing Boromir the whole time, and that's basically it. And they get some of their gifts, but that's about it. So like without that, you know, like, oh yeah, we previously met in Rivendell, we've forged a relationship with, you know, Galadriel and Elrond, you know, it's kind of like, how did this happen? But okay, I guess going along with it. This is a Lego game, right? It's not meant to be like a cinematic masterpiece or super seamless or anything. So when something cool happens, it really like surprises me, like oh wow, that was amazing, that was super cool. So there's this one part where the camera is like panning over the crowd of the orcs, and then it continues panning down to behind like the first wall of the keep, and it immediately like transitions into the gameplay part. And I was like, that was cool. That was a really cool transition, because a lot of times it'll be a cutscene and then it'll cut to black and then it'll load into the gameplay section. But this was like it was like switching, you know, transitioning from one to the other. I thought that was really cool. Ooh, that was a smooth transition for a Lego game. Oh my.
Yeah, I thought there was, like you said, Lego pushing things along to get kids to kind of play games and stuff. But I thought, like you said, there are elements that are kind of impressive. And even like the mountain areas, like because the game's like, what, 10, 12 years old or something like that. And I think even like the animation for like the rock formations and mountains, like looks pretty solid. You know what I mean? And it looks really good in Helm's Deep. And then at the beginning, when the Last Alliance is fighting Sauron, like I was pretty impressed with that whole scene. Like obviously, I'm like going back, but like there were elements where they were redoing these cutscenes from the movies, and I was like, that's really good for a Lego game.
Yeah, and that's also, you know, the beauty of a Lego game is that they don't have to make it that good, because it's a Lego game. You know, they're Lego figures, so it doesn't have to be like that detailed or anything. But when they do put in like that little bit of extra effort to be like, let's make this look really good, I think it really pays off.
I think too, one of the things that surprised me was like that there were some aspects too that were more in line with like the book than the Peter Jackson movies. Like during the Warg battle, like Gandalf just kind of goes and to find Éomer. And I think it wasn't exactly like that in the book, but they are fighting people before they get to Helm's Deep. And that's when Gandalf goes to find reinforcements. And I think in the movie, when does he leave? Do you remember?
It's like it's like right after it's pretty soon after they, like cleanse Theoden. And then he just like goes down to the stable, finds Shadowfax, and then is like, bye.
That's right.
I'll see you in 3 days. And they're like, okay, I guess.
Yeah, I would not have guessed that the Lego movie would have been like, we're making these changes, and it was more in line with the book than the films. It's kind of surprised.
Mm-hmm. So this part of the gameplay in the battle is literally just getting up to the top level of the wall and then like it cutscenes into another part of the battle. So that's just like the first part of the gameplay is you're just like doing puzzles to climb the wall. Not like super impressive, but okay. Then we do get the cutscene of Gimli not being able to see and Legolas saying, "Shall I describe it to you or fetch you a box?" Absolute classic.
Classic, dude. The best part about the Two Towers is Gimli and Legolas, and they brought it here for us. Something
that I think could have been fun is incorporating their back and forth game of who can, kill more people. That happens in the movie. I think that would have been cool to somehow incorporate into the gameplay where like you have to switch off as Gimli and Legolas and then like you have a counter going up in the corner showing like how many orcs you've killed so far as each character. That could have been fun.
Oh, especially to add it later for like a time challenge or something where you have to like as Gimli beat Legolas or like come back and Legolas beat Gimli or like have like two-player option. That would have been awesome.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I guess I should also mention that this game, I don't know if all of the Lego games have it, but this one you can play as two people and you can have someone come over and sync up another Wii remote or something.
Oh, right.
And then play the game together. I saw a TikTok that it was like the year 2090 and it's like an old person talking to their grandchild and it's like, I don't get it. If your games weren't on the internet back then, how did you play with your friends? And it's like, we had to go over to each other's houses and play on the same TV.
Man, so while we would have like Halo LAN parties in high school and we would each have to bring our Xboxes and then link them up so we could play 16. And we'd have 4 on one screen, 4 on one screen, and we'd have 4 people with 4 TVs, and there were 16 of us. Kids in 2090 will never know.
They will never know, yeah. This part of the gameplay, you're just knocking over various ladders. Sometimes you have to be Legolas and you have to shoot it down. Other times you're Gimli and you have to use his axe to like break it down. This is another one of those, like first it starts out with 3 and then a next wave comes in and it's 5 and then it's, 6 or whatever. Then nothing too hard. Not that like I want a video game to be impossible, but I was kind of expecting for the Helm's Deep level to be like kind of hard,
right? Or
for there to be parts where it's like it's impossible and then it just like immediately like cuts into like the next part where you're just failing. Because as you're playing it, you're like, all right, we knocked down all the ladders, and then it's like, no, just kidding, you're still losing the battle.
Yeah. Did you ever play the like the PS2 original Xbox like movie video games based, like the Two Towers and the Return of the King?
I have not played those because I was only recently introduced to Lord of the Rings by starting this podcast, so I wouldn't have played those games at the time, but I do remember that it was definitely like a trend in the 2000s that when there was a movie, there was a corresponding video game.
Right.
And a lot of the times, I feel like they made those video games impossible.
Yeah. And it was like that, too. There's a Helm's Deep level. It's almost structured very similarly to the Lego level, the Helm's Deep Lego level. But yeah, where you're knocking down ladders and killing orcs and stuff. But I remember it was hard. It was hard. And like you said, this one was definitely more laid back.
Yeah. And again, I think it's because it's for like, probably like 10-year-olds and 12-year-olds is the main audience.
We need to toughen them up.
Yeah. They don't know the pain. So then we have a cutscene of the Olympic torch scene, and it's in slow-mo. It's really great. The orc is running with the torch to the drain pipe to blow up the wall. Legolas is shooting at him. It's not working. And then Gimli I thought it was an anvil at first, because that's a like classic cartoon move, just using like an anvil.
Right.
But in a playthrough, I think it's pointed out that it was a Batman logo.
Oh.
And this is because at the time, the next Lego game that was coming out was a Batman game.
Oh,
so
cool.
This would have been like a fun little, if people who were super into the Lego game fandoms were like, ooh, what's going to be their next game? That would have been like a fun little Easter egg for them to find. Just like a fun little clue. Then the wall blows up, you play again, and you have to go back up to the keep as, everyone's retreating further inside. Sadly, there is no shield surfing moment from Legolas.
He just like rides on it like a Mary Poppins umbrella. He kind of just floats down with the shield. Right?
I must have totally missed that part. But I was really keeping an eye out. I thought either it was going to be in the cutscene or it was going to be like some new unlocked ability that you could play as Legolas and like shield surf at any point. But no shield surfing.
Also, there's surfing Ents. So no surfing Legolas, but we get surfing Ents. Like, what the heck?
I know, yeah. I guess they have to pick and choose their, iconic moments. And it's hard when like the Battle of Helm's Deep is 45 entire minutes of absolutely iconic cinema,
So true. So true.
Like, how do we turn this into one level of a video game? Then it's a cutscene of barricading the door. Aragorn and Gimli go outside to try and buy them some time. I think at this point, maybe I'm misremembering or maybe I was just imagining it, but I think at some point there's another Peter Jackson cameo and it looks like he's throwing an Oscar to fight. And I was like, that's really funny.
Next level Easter egg callbacks.
Yes.
Good job, Lego.
Hold on! How long do you
Did
need?
Peter Jackson just throw an Oscar?
Give me! Timbers!
That's what it looked like. That just looked like Peter Jackson threw an Oscar. Is there a Peter Jackson cameo in every one of these? That's fun. Because you do see Peter Jackson in Bree. It's not like an action sequence. You're just like walking around exploring Bree, so you easily could have missed him, but he's like sitting on a fence eating a carrot. That is like an actual, cameo in the movies. So I wasn't expecting to see him again. So now I'm going to keep my eye out when we get to the Return of the King part, because I'm like, oh, maybe they're putting him, as a cameo in each one of the movies, like he did with his kids,
right.
Yeah, Peter Jackson cameo, excellent, great choice. The fact that it looks like he's throwing an Oscar because famously, Lord of the Rings was at that point the most award-winning film, at the time.
Totally. 11 Oscars. He like melted them all into one giant Oscar to defeat.
Yes, for a weapon. Yeah. Here's my issue with the toss me scene.
Yeah.
The entire game, we have been tossing Gimli. It's a playable mechanic that there are some times where you have to switch over to Aragorn and throw Legolas or Aragorn, and you have to throw Gimli at an ice block and he has to break it with his axe. And so now we have this scene where he's like, I'm willing to humble myself and let you toss me. And then he goes, don't tell the elf. And I'm like, but I have been throwing you as Legolas multiple points throughout this game. So I would have preferred that you're not able, this is a moment that like unlocks this ability in the game, that like at this point and then afterwards you are able to throw Gimli. And maybe like in previous sections where you needed to throw Gimli, maybe instead you can only throw one of the hobbits or something, like you can't throw Gimli until until Helm's Deep, until he says, "Toss me."
Yeah, and I mean, they make you backtrack later on. It totally could have been workable. Like you said, total in-game inconsistency. They could have used a great gag, unlockable ability. Yeah, I like
and
that.
Then you have to go back into levels that you've already done. Now that you've unlocked this ability, you can go back and, solve these puzzles and, find Easter eggs and stuff. Yeah.
Lego developers, give Mary Clay a job, because she obviously is better at developing the plot and unlocking achievement mechanics than you are.
Yes, thank you. Finally being recognized for my talents 12 years after this game came out. Or 11 years, I forget. Throw Gimli, and then Aragorn jumps over and you fight off the orcs, and then you have to every now and then you have to swap to Legolas, who's up on top of the wall and is, fighting stuff back there. So that's kind of like a fun element, that like you're playing these different areas of the battle, different like, I'm not a sports person, but area defense, is that what it is? I don't know, whatever.
I am also a bad sports person, so we're just going to be lost in the weeds together.
Great. Eventually, you have to climb back up to the top where Legolas is, and then everyone retreats inside. The cutscene, they're barricading themselves inside. They're pushing a piano in front of the doors. Love it. This is another thing that Lego, you should hire me. I was really hoping for a classic chaotic things happening in the background moment where like Theoden and Aragorn are having this serious conversation, and Aragorn's like, "Ride for Rohan," and all this stuff. But in the background, they're just like adding increasingly silly things to barricade the door with. And like at some point, someone puts like Gimli on top of the pile. Like, I think that would have been great.
Yeah, they did a piano and they stopped with the pig. Like you said, could have kept going.
They do bring a pig in. Yeah. When they were bringing the pig in, I was like, okay, so they're going to keep adding silly things, but that was it. This has always been like a weird part for me. Watching the movie and this part as well, it's like the only difference, between like 5 minutes ago in the battle and now is that Theoden has a change of attitude.
Yeah.
And that's it. It's not like all of a sudden they have a bunch more weapons or, it's just all of a sudden Theoden gains the motivation to fight for his people.
It's true, and it almost seems like you said in the movie and the game, where they ride out like and just wreck people. It almost feels like they didn't even need Gandalf and Éomer and the Huorns later on. Like they just, like you said, the power of friendship. The
power of friendship, yes. Nothing is truly more powerful. This part of the gameplay was a bit weird because you're playing as Theoden on the horse and you're on horseback and the camera is like following as you move through the crowd. But I didn't have control over where the horse was riding. Like it kept moving no matter what I did. So to me, I was like, okay, so at first I was like, this is a cutscene. But then I saw that I was like losing hearts and stuff. So I'm like, am I supposed to be fighting these people? So I'm swinging my sword around, but I wasn't really having much control over where it was going. And I was still like losing points and stuff. So it was just kind of like a confusing thing. Also, they didn't have the triumphant final form of the Rohirrim theme playing. It was just like some other part of the score.
Really?
But this is the part in the movie where the like final throughout Two Towers, when you hear the Rohan theme, it's like slowly building and transforming because Rohan is like, this weakened country, slowly like regaining strength and everything. And so the Rohan theme is reflected in that. And then finally it gets to like, it's super triumphant. There's like a bunch of like brass instruments rather than just like the sad little violin at the start. And that was not in this part in the game. So I feel like they were going for, yeah, this is a really cinematic moment, but it just was really, like, it really missed it for me.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that too, because I think the playthrough guy that I watched that you sent me, I think he was really confused too at that riding scene. And then even to, like, they bring cave trolls into it and you're supposed to, like, jump over, like, their...
Oh, I missed that entirely. I was just probably trying to figure out what I was supposed to be doing.
Yeah, there are cave trolls at Helm's Deep. And I was like, I mean, it's fun, you know, you got to introduce some fun elements for kids and stuff. But yeah, it seemed like he was confused. And they didn't even get the cinematic part right, the cutscene.
Yeah. So it just really missed the mark for me. Followed by, in the movie, one of the, you know, I would say like easily a top 5 moment of the whole Lord of the Rings trilogy is Gandalf showing up at Helm's Deep.
Oh, yeah.
With Éomer and the rest of the Rohirrim. But in the game, it's hilarious because it's like 9 horses.
It's so true. I wondered that too. I was like, they must have not had the bandwidth to put that many horses on screen.
Yeah. It was really funny. It made me laugh so much. I was like, yeah, 8 additional soldiers is really going to turn the tides in this battle. Yay, you win Helm's Deep. It's funny because in the movie, they're obviously cutting back and forth a lot. And so you're progressing different parts of the story, you know, one bit at a time. Whereas in the game, you're just doing like one whole chunk at a time. So you finish the Helm's Deep level and you're like, okay, so I'm at the end of 2 towers now, but only for like a third of the plot. Yeah. There's still like 2/3 I have to progress.
Because they take you to the Frodo and Sam and Smeagol part after this, right? Or is it not? Is it not there yet? Okay.
Then you start playing as, you're in Osgiliath. Faramir, you know, wants to use the ring for Gondor, and then the Black Riders show up in Osgiliath. Really creepy, but I guess effective. So like props to the animators and developers. When Frodo goes into like his poltergeist, they're here, and his eyes like flip over, and they're just all white, very creepy.
They're here.
Oh no! Oh, I don't like that. I mean, that was very effective for Lego.
Yeah, I was also pretty shocked at how creepy Lego was able to make a Lego piece look. Like, it made me feel like Annabelle vibes. You know what I mean?
Yes,
and it was like, this is a cute Lego movie. I would have had nightmares if I was 10 years old playing that, no doubt.
Oh, it was scary. Yeah, it was creepy. I did not like it, but in a good way, you know?
Yeah, same.
This level I thought was interesting because you are going back. It's another kind of thing where you're playing as different characters, but in different areas of the level. And so depending on, eventually you'll get to a point with one set of characters where you can't progress anymore. And so then you have to jump to another character to do something. So first you're playing as Frodo, Sam, and Gollum. And the goal is to find a knife to cut Gollum's to cut the ropes that he's tied up with, because they have taken, if you go into your inventory and you try and like pull out Sting, it's gone because they've taken their weapons. So I thought that was a fun little like continuity thing that they included. Then you're switching to Faramir, and he is doing stuff at the foreground of the level to trigger events in the background where Frodo, Sam, and Gollum are, and so then they can keep progressing. I absolutely hate that you have to play as Gollum at some points, because his special ability is that he can just like scuttle up walls
with like the fish bones, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
like, I
it's
hate
creepy.
I'm like, I don't like this. I really don't like this. Like, he's like a slimy little, I hate it. I hate it.
Have you ever read Dracula? There's a part where like Dracula's crawling and scuttling like that up the walls. And I only say that because I've only recently read it. And so, like you said, I had thought about it too. I was like, ooh, Gollum really captures that creepy old Dracula vibe there.
Yeah, it's also like, you know, a horror movie trope of like a demon someone possessed is like crawling on the ceiling, you know?
So
it has that like element to it.
Yeah.
So then the Witch King and his beast show up, and then you transition to playing as Faramir trying to shoot down the Witch King, and meanwhile, Frodo, Sam, and Gollum have to stay out of sight. So not like a particularly hard level. It just, this was the last time, for your context, when I was playing previously as Sam and Frodo and Gollum, it was the Dead Marshes level, and it was, I said, the most infuriating and annoying piece of a video game I've ever played in my life. Like, it was insufferable for a variety of reasons. So I'm glad this was more enjoyable.
Do you have to do the same thing? Because I didn't get to that part in the playthrough. Do you have to like hide from the Nazgul and stuff as well? Or do you have to do something else?
So first, you're in the marshes and you're following Gollum, and you have to follow the path. And if you accidentally fall off into the marshes, then you like die or you lose points. Fire is spontaneously combusting behind Gollum. So then you have to go as Sam and you have to find a well to fill up a bucket and put the fire out. But you're in a marsh. You're surrounded by water. Why can you not just use the marsh water?
Dang.
And then throughout the whole level, every 30 seconds, Gollum is saying, "Come on, Hobbitses, this way. Hurry up, Hobbitses." And I was like, I'm going to have to mute the level. Like, and then you do that for, it just like goes on entirely too long. And then the Witch King shows up, and then you have to like hide from him as you're like moving through. Anyway, so that part was, I hated it so much. So this part was way better to play.
Yeah.
Then after the Witch King has been sent off, you see Faramir like actively reaching for the ring and then pulling himself back, which is a detail that they don't like put in the movie. It's only put here because they really need to show like show what's happening, rather than being able to, in the movie they're showing this like emotional mental transformation that he's going in, and it's just a lot quicker and more on the nose to show him reaching for the ring and then pulling back. But as someone who loves Faramir so deeply because of what he's like in the book and is pained by how he was adapted in Two Towers movie.
Amen.
I love that little detail that like you see him actively resisting the ring, and I'm like, that's my boy.
See, look at that Lego getting Tolkien more right than the Peter Jackson movies. Let's go.
Yes.
Lego. 2
Love
points for
it.
Lego.
Yes. So, he decides that he will not use the ring and sends them on their way. At this point, Two Towers is over, right? But where the hell are the Ents and Merry and Pippin? We have not seen them in a while.
It's true.
So this is another interesting choice that the game makes that I don't quite understand what was happening. You don't go to like a end of level sequence where like it shows you your achievements and everything. It immediately goes into a cutscene with Treebeard saying like, "I promised Gandalf I would keep you safe." And then they arrive at Isengard and they see all of the trees burned and chopped down. You can actually see two of the orcs are like in the middle of chopping went down, and then they see Treebeard and they run away. So you immediately go right into this part, which is like a completely different part of the story, but it's within the Osgiliath level. So just kind of confusing.
It was strange.
Yeah.
Because like you said, they started off earlier, like the Two Towers, and then they immediately go into the beginning of Return of the King.
Yeah.
You know?
It's
which
weird.
is
Yeah. Then you play as the Ents doing the march on Isengard. This is a super easy level because you're just playing as Treebeard and you're just walking around smashing things, and like there's nothing better. You break down the dams by like throwing boulders at stuff. Isengard is flooded. As you mentioned earlier, we see an Ent surfing on top of it. Great little comedic moment, you know? And then Saruman is throwing a little temper tantrum and kicks down the Palantir. This is another super weird choice that they make. They immediately go into one of the intro scenes of Return of the King. And Gandalf and Aragorn and company roll up and, you know, Merry goes, "Welcome, my lords, to Isengard." Gandalf says, you know, like, "Thank you, Treebeard, for dealing with our Saruman problem. You're going to stay here and guard him." I understand this because in the extended edition of Return of the King, the way that Saruman is dealt with is that he is stabbed, pushed off the top of Orthanc, and then impaled. And I don't think that's something you can adapt in a children's game.
Yeah, you can't really, even if you have him fall off and he breaks into little brick pieces.
That was what I was going to suggest as a potential alternative, is you have him fall off Orthanc, and then the little like Lego breaking sound effect happens. Like, I think that would be fine.
Yeah, you don't even have to have Grima murder him. You can just have him like trip or something because he's angry,
Yeah.
Something cute and fun.
Treebeard is instructed to stay there and keep watch after Saruman. Pippin picks up the Palantir and Gandalf, asks for it, and he tucks it behind his beard for safekeeping.
So many great beard gags.
It's really funny. And then, Pippin is sad to have lost the Palantir. And then the level ends. Just like a lot of weird things. So the level ends, you see all of your like achievements pop up, and then you click continue story. And you get one final scene of Sam and Frodo, saying, I'm sorry. Sorry I was such a terrible person when I was possessed by the ring, Gollum and Smeagol are having that, internal battle. And then it pans up and you see Mordor and the Eye of Sauron. And then the credits roll. So what I would have suggested if I was hired by Lego, what I would do is you play the Helm's Deep level, and then you play the March on Isengard, and then you play the Osgiliath part of the story. And then you can just seamlessly go into that final cutscene of Frodo and Sam and Gollum leaving Osgiliath, heading towards Mordor, and then you roll the credits, and then you can have like the last Two Towers level end,
Yeah, I didn't even think about them continuing the Fangorn, hold the Ents in the Battle of Isengard, because if that was their last scene, maybe it would have made sense. But they don't even end it there. I didn't even think about them. They switch back to Frodo and Sam, where they end in the regular movie. So it almost makes zero sense why they combine those two things. Super weird.
Yeah, just like very odd storyboarding choices. I think they did, looking at like Two Towers Lego version as a whole, I think they did as good a job as they could, like condensing this insane story down. But yeah, a couple like mechanical pieces that I would have been like, maybe we end the story with the main plot of the story. Like we show Mordor like we have at the end of, Fellowship or whatever it was. So that would be my suggestion to Lego if they were to re-release it for the Switch.
I love it. This is what Tolkien nerds do. We're like, oh, this is a fun little happy Lego adaptation. Here are your notes to get Tolkien in the story.
Here's everything you've done wrong.
Exactly.
Yeah, again, another just like weird story thing was their decision to keep the first scene of Return of the King at the end of Two Towers. Yeah, weird little like story moment, but I guess that's fine. I guess it's so that when you start Return of the King, when you start the Return of the King part of the game, you are like immediately in the action, I guess. I'm trying to think about what it's probably going to start off with, I don't even know, because like for so much of it is just Sam and Gollum at each other's throats and Frodo just like hanging on for dear life.
Yeah.
Just like trying to get through it. So I don't know like what playable parts they're going to have for Return of the King.
So you haven't got there yet. Are you going in sequential
No, yeah.
order?
So this is as far as I've played so far.
I love it.
Ooh, maybe there will be a level where you go and light the beacons. That could be fun, because that actually is a gameplay element where you have to usually you're playing as Sam and you have to light a bunch of fires. So that could be a fun part. Yeah, interested to maybe finally see Éowyn in battle like she's been wanting to do this whole time.
Get to cut off a fell beast's head and maybe stab the Witch King.
Yeah, that'd be great. Interested to see if Arwen makes another appearance at all.
I'm gonna put money that she's. You tell me if you think I'm wrong. I'm gonna bet money that she doesn't come through until the end when she marries Aragorn.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a cutscene at the very end where they're all, reuniting and she shows up. And then you have like a Lego, like smooching sound effect or something. I don't know. Well, Nick, thank you so much for joining me to talk about this game. Where can people find you on the internet?
Yeah, I just want to say thanks for having me to introduce this to me. I mean, I knew it existed, but just how much fun I would have even just to watch playthroughs. Had a great time watching it and talking about it. But I'm on the internet, on Twitter and Instagram at NJSPolk. And then also our Tolkien Heads podcast is both Instagram and Twitter at Tolkien_heads. And I also write a Substack called Tolkien Pop, where I talk about the intersection of pop culture and Tolkien stuff. So I'm going to be adding this to my Tolkien Pop Substack so people can get
introduced. Thank
you. Yeah, so people need to know about Lord of the Rings and Lego.
Yes, absolutely.
And your
it's
podcast.
Such a fun intersection. That's What I'm Talking About's cover art is by Vaishon Brandon. You can support him on Instagram at Vaishon Designs. You can get merch for That's What I'm Talking About by going to tpublic.com/user/TolkienAboutPod. You can follow the podcast on social media at TolkienAboutPod, and you can follow me on Twitter and TikTok at MCWattsUp and on Instagram at MCTurnDownForWhat. If you want to support the podcast, you can become a patron. Go to patreon.com/TolkienAboutPod to explore the different levels of support that are available. You can become a sponsor of the podcast like Guy. Guy, thank you so much for continuing to sponsor this podcast, for continuing to show your support for it. I so much appreciate it. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you. And one final thing before we go, there will not be an episode out next week. I'm doing something a little different and just need some more time to put it together. So use this time to catch up on the Lego episodes, go watch some playthroughs. By the way, in case you haven't noticed, in the episode description, I have been linking to the Lego Lord of the Rings cutscenes as well as a playlist of a playthrough. So if you have no reference for what at all we have been talking about these past few weeks, you can go watch those, catch up on the episodes, and then we will be back with a special episode that I'm excited for in 2 weeks. Yeah, I think that's how time works. Thank you again for joining us. Do you have any parting words for the audience?
I'm a big adaptations guy, so don't stop with Lord of the Rings Lego. I would say read Lord of the Rings fanfic if you can find it. And other things like that. They're super fun and weird, and you can get a lot out of it. So
awesome. And that's what I'm talking about.